So here we go. Hey, do you know where you are? This is not where the fire started, but man, it got here in a hurry. I mean, it just spread here real quick. First church in Kentucky started up in E-Town, Severn Valley. Second was Cedar Creek Baptist Church up in Bardstown. Man, you're talking about June for Severn Valley, July the 4th for Cedar Creek. They should have been first, but they drug around until July the 4th. And then the third one was right up the road here, not very far, in what's now Garrett County, used to be Lincoln County, and that was the Traveling Church with Lewis Craig. So they came here in December of 1781. So that year you got 3 Baptist churches in the state. Don't have any buildings at that time, but you got 3 Baptist churches. Now, you are in Pulaski County. This is by area the 3rd largest county in the state. You are in the city of Somerset, the 34th largest city in the state. You are very close to the banks of Lake Cumberland, which is one of the largest man-made lakes in the state. And believe you me, in those summer months, you know it. You can't move for people bringing their boats down here. Covers 5 counties and just, I forget how many thousands of shoreline that is. But that's where you are. But if you move north just a little bit, you'll find Double Springs Baptist Church. That's up close to where I live. I live like 2 blocks from it, up in Lincoln County. Double Springs Baptist Church. It's an 1804 church, but what a history it has. In fact, one of its pastors used to pastor here as well. Daniel James, he's buried out the road here east of town. Daniel James is the great-grandfather of Sam and Bud Walton, who started the Walmart store. He pastored the church up the road here. You go a little bit farther up there and you get in Crab Orchard. And in Crab Orchard, man, you got Crab Orchard Baptist Church. That's Jeremiah Vardaman country, you know. And then you also have Moses Foley there, who pastored longer than anybody else. And by the way, Moses Foley is the great-grandfather of Red Foley, who used to sing Peace in the Valley. Born right up the road here, by the way. So that's up that way. And then, of course, the Traveling Church is up there now. There's nothing there, and there was any buildings there. It was called Gilbert's Creek Regular Baptist Church, Lewis Craig. What's so unusual about that? Back then, you had regular Baptists and you had separate Baptists. He was a separate Baptist in Virginia, but when he came here, he became a regular Baptist. And later on, you have Gilbert's Creek Separate Baptist Church down the street there, on the same creek, about a mile apart. That was started by Joseph Bledsoe. Bledsoe was a regular Baptist in Virginia, but when he came here, he became a separate Baptist. Back then, folks, in all honesty, not that much difference between them. But different things. What's unusual about Bledsoe, their church started the Crab Orchard Baptist Church. And what's also unusual about Joseph Bledsoe, his grandson is a fellow that moved to Waco, Texas, and started J.E.B. Baylor and started Baylor University. They're from right here in this area. Now, you go just a little bit east of here, out on 80, you'll come to an area of 461. If you came through that roundabout, which I don't know why we've ever done that in this country. If you ain't got enough sense to pull up and stop and go, you ain't got no business behind the wheel. But in that general area there, the James family, who have connection to Jesse James, yes they do, because Jeremiah Vardaman married Betsy James. Betsy James is the cousin of Robert Sally James, who gave birth, his wife did anyway, to Frank and Jesse James. But listen, this junk you hear about Jesse James robbing the bank here at Somerset, that can't be proven. As far as I know, he never got on this side of Bowling Green, Kentucky, as far as I know. But you hear all those things. Because everybody around here is either kin to Jesse James or Daniel Boone. You just ask them. You know, so, no, a lot of that you just gotta, it's kind of like history, fella, if you know what I'm talking about. The only people who really know history are the people who lived it. We're best have got written history and oral history, but I guarantee you a lot of that is wrong. Like, well, Daniel Boone, he was a member of this church. No, he was not. He was never a member of a Baptist church. Was he saved? He said he was. I don't know. He wrote that he was a Christian. He was a Quaker. That's the best you can get it. That's the best you can get it. Now they say that Squire Boone was a Baptist preacher, but we have an argument now about that. Yeah, he performed the first wedding here in the state, but you know, I don't know what it was really, but some of that stuff gets a little bit out of hand when you start dealing with history. But if you go a little farther out there, you got 5,000 acres that the James family had. Daniel James came out of that family. Betsy James, Jeremiah Garland came out of that area. Jeremiah Barton was the second pastor of Crab Orchard Baptist Church, 1802 to 1810. And then he moved farther north and pastored a number of churches, and finally ended up in Missouri, kind of like Boone did, and pastored a church out there, and he's buried out there in Missouri. And I've been to his grave, but to get there, you got to cross a couple of cow fields, and you know what? And back in the back there, half the tombstones were broken down. But that's where he's buried at. He probably, according to John Mason Peck, baptized more people in Kentucky than any other preacher. 8,000 plus people, they suggest. But who knows? Anyway, so out there at the James family farm, if you go a little farther and you get into London, Kentucky, and just north of London, Kentucky, well, not north, but that's where the road was split. But you have the Adawamani, I can't do Indian words good, trail. That's what the Indians called it. It was the old Warriors Trail. We call it Boone Trail. It's called the Wilderness Road. It's a lot of things it's called. It's kind of like the Appalachian Mountains or whatever you want to call them, depending on what part of the country you're in. But, you know, it started basically up in Philadelphia and came down through Virginia, and then it came across the mountain in Cumberland Gap and came up in our area, and really it went farther north than that. It went up to the Ohio River, and just north of London there, a little area called Hazel Patch, it broke off. And there were a number of these roads that broke off. They came over to Crab Orchard, and they came over to Harrisburg, they came over to Stanford, and then they went up into Louisville at the Falls of the Ohio. And then there's some said that it even went as far as the Great Lakes and stretched all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Indian trails. At some places, they say no wider than a man's shoulders. That's the old buffalo traces. Highway 68 is like that. That's the old buffalo trace. And the Indians came along, they used them for hunting grounds, and it goes from there. Well, so what happened is this. In 1775, Richard Henderson, a judge transplant from Virginia to North Carolina, got with the Indians and bought 20 million acres of land, much of Kentucky, part of Tennessee, and for basically what today would be almost $2 million. Not money, but in trading goods. And so, but the problem with that is, he bought it from the Cherokees. And the problem with that is, they didn't own it. I mean, it was a hunting land. I mean, you got the Chickasaw, you got the Cherokee, you got the Shawnee. This is their hunting land. This is the Great Valley, they called it. And so, for Henderson to buy, spend $2 million worth of trade goods to buy something that the Indians didn't own. The second problem was the Proclamation Act of 1763 that said no white person can buy anything. It said a lot of things, but one of the things it said, no white person can buy anything from the Indian, and people cannot buy land. Back to 1763, you're still under British rule. You can't go over that proclamation line, which was an invisible line that went down through the mountains, Alleghenies, Appalachians, it went down, and you weren't allowed to buy anything over there. But he did. You know why he did it? He wanted to sell property. So he got a bunch of people and began to sell property to do it. Daniel Boone came here in '75, started the Sycamore Show down in Tennessee, came across the Cumberland Gap, and he hired 30 axemen. Some of them were well-known people who are going to be in history, and his daughter was one of those people that came with him. She was married to a man by the name of Hayes, and she came with as one of the cooks. Another old Negro lady came with him as one of the cooks, and they cut a path from across that mountain all the way up to Boonesboro. I don't know how good a path it was. They did it in 30 days with axes, and later on you couldn't even drive a wagon across it. So who knows? But that's how we got to the state of Kentucky. And then Craig comes in here in '81, right off the road here. He stops at Black Fork, Virginia, which is now Abingdon, Virginia. And there he meets Billy Bush and his crew. Billy Bush is buried up in Clark County, just across the river from Boonesboro. I've been to his grave. It's up on the side of a hill. You have to know where it is to find it. But Billy Bush comes in here. Craig meets him in 1781 there, and he works with them into becoming a church, and they will become the Providence Baptist Church, which is the 8th Baptist church in the state of Kentucky. And they're just across the river. If you ever go up that way and you're headed into Winchester, you'll pass Boonesboro, go across the river towards Winchester, turn left on Old Church Road, go to the very end. There's a beautiful stone church there, built in 1790. It's still standing. The black community have it. The white community gave it to them. They went on up the road and built another one. But it's a gorgeous church. And even though some of them claim Daniel Boone was a member here, Brother Winters. Okay, that's fine. You know, some people just don't argue with. You know, you just let it go. And but Billy Bush goes up there, and they end up starting the 8th Baptist Church in the county. Now, in 1763, we were going to close off the war. You got the French and Indian War, and then you got the Treaty of Versailles in 1763. And what happened? The French says we're going to give all our land, not quite all of it, but they said that we're going to give all our land east of the Mississippi to you guys. Well, Virginia jumped on it, and Virginia claimed Kentucky, or what was then Kentucky. You don't have all of Kentucky until 1818 when you got the Jackson Purchase under Andrew Jackson and a fellow from our area here by the name of Isaac Shelby, two-time governor of the state of Kentucky, and he's buried up here in Danville. So they claimed Kentucky, Virginia did, and they made it part of Fincastle County, Virginia, and it will stay that way for a year or so, and then they'll call it Kentucky County, Virginia. And then in 1780, they divided into the 3 counties that Brother mentioned a while ago, Lincoln County being the biggest of those counties. Well, what happened to all that land? Well, in 1778, Virginia said, hey, that stuff the Henderson sold you, that's null and void. That ain't working around here. So that was the end of it. That was the end. Transylvania, he wanted to start another colony is what he wanted to do at Boonesboro. And he was on the right foot, but he did things illegal and he couldn't do it. Now, we get into Pulaski County. That's where we are today. 3rd largest county in the state. Here's this to me is the most unusual thing about Pulaski County, is where it got its name. About 2 blocks from here, on Church Street, is where the old First Baptist used to be. It's called Sinking Creek there. And you wouldn't know it except there's a big graveyard there, and most of the stones are gone. But there's a fellow that's buried there by the name of Nicholas Jasper. And he came here early on. I don't know, I can give you an exact date on when he came here, but when they met in his house, about 1798, I guess it was, because that's when Pulaski County was formed. It was the, I forget, I think it was like I forget what number it was now. But anyway, he suggested, they want names. He said, let's name it Pulaski. Wow, sounds good. Who's Pulaski? Casimir Pulaski. Remember him? He fought in the Revolutionary War. He was from over across the water, the Polish guy. He came over here, and he did a lot of great things there, but he had to leave because of some things he did do. And he came over here. He got with Washington, and what happened in Philadelphia at the Battle of Brandywine in maybe 77, I can't remember now. But in 1777, Howe, who was the British commander, has them surrounded, and he's going to kill them, and he's going to get a hold of Washington. But Pulaski said this is what he did over in Poland. He said, "Hey, Mr. Washington, if you'll let me get a bunch of men get on horseback, I can drive them back while y'all escape." And that's exactly what happened. And in doing so, he saved George Washington. You know what Howe did? He backed off. Boy, did he get criticized for it later on. Because if he had pursued Washington, guess what? We'd still be Great Britain. More than likely, still be Great Britain. So he says, let's name it after him. You know why I got a problem with that? He had a brother, and by the way, Nicholas Jasper is buried, like I said, down in his grave. He had a brother, William Jasper. Let me give you this first. Pulaski was killed, I believe, in October of 1779, I think, at the Battle of Savannah. And he's buried down there somewhere. They said they found his bones. They say a lot of things. It's some of the stories that I've been. I'm not going to get into it. But here's what happened. Nicholas' brother, William, fought there as well. But before he had fought at the Battle of Charleston. And when he was fighting, he was inside the fort. The guys that were shooting at him, the guns and stuff, was coming from out in the ocean offshore. So they shot the flag down. You know what he did? He went and grabbed the flag, got outside the fort, put it on a pole, held it up while the battle was still going. He was a hero. He was a hero down in Savannah too. In fact, the governor of Georgia said, "Hey, I'm going to make you a lieutenant or something," and he gave him his sword. He said, "I don't want to go," but he refused it because he couldn't read and write, and he said, "I don't deserve to be in that position." But he was a hero. But he got killed at the Battle of Savannah 2 days before Pulaski did. 2 days. Great hero. But his brother names it after Pulaski. Why did you not name it after your brother?
Jasper County.
Jasper County. There's Jasper counties all over the world. This should have been Jasper County. I think about going down and pushing his tubes on them. Well, then we get into Somerset here, this city, 34th largest city of the state, and the meeting for making this or getting involved in the city of Somerset was held at the home of Thomas Hansford. Now, I personally believe that Hansford came to Kentucky with Billy Bush and his bunch because he's going to end up in Montgomery County. The Indians got pretty rough on him up there, so he moved to Travelers, and finally he moves out here east near the James family situation. But he also has some land right down here on Sinking Creek, what they call Sinking Creek, and sad what's happened to that. But they held a meeting there, and later on they'll hold a meeting in Nicholas Jasper's place as well. Well, something has to be done. So there's a fella by the name of William Dodson. Does anybody in here know Alan Dobson with the Southern Baptist? Okay. It's his kin folks. They gave 40 acres of land to William Dodson to build this city. 40 acres. And he divided it in half-acre lots, which amounted to 80 lots. He kept several. Later on, Dodson will sell 2 acres of land right down here where the old church was to, I'm going to call it First Baptist, it was Sinking Creek then, to build a church on, and he sold it to them 2 acres for $7. Then they would build a log house, later on build a red brick house. That during the Civil War became, the soldiers occupied it for a while. It also became a hospital for a while. And the name Somerset, and this is probably more legend than I can back up. They say it comes from a family group here that was living in the area at the time who were from Somerset, New Jersey. Others say it came from Somerset, England, which is probably where Somerset, New Jersey came from.
Yeah.
But, you know, who knows for sure about that? But with a name like Somerset, you know it wasn't from this bunch around here. I'll tell you that. Well, anyway, now we get into First Baptist. I'm going to run out of time. So we're getting First Baptist Church. That's what we're going to call it. 1799. Started by Flat Lake Baptist Church. Oldest church in the area. It's out east of town. You turn left on 461, go up all the way about a mile, turn to the right, it's right back in there. Oldest church in the county. So it started in January of 1799. And then what you have, though, you have a lot of people living in this area who would have to go out there to go to church, and they didn't want to do that. So they came up with the idea, let's start this church over here in town on Sinking Creek. And that's in June 1799. They start the church there, see, over here by the old graveyard. And it becomes the church. It never becomes First Baptist, I don't believe, until they move to this area here. They don't move to this area here until basically 1783 is when the old church was dedicated. It, you know, it's went through some fires and stuff and had several things done to it. But Flat Lake started church. William Dodson gave them 2 acres for $7, and then here's where we are. We've got, you see, there's about 40 plus pastors. Brian mentioned a couple of them today, and this church has done a great job in the area of missions. They've started, I know of, at least 11 Baptist